The Rules Committee will come to order. First of all, let me express my appreciation to my good friend from Fort Lauderdale. We don't have a quorum in the room, but there is no objection to our proceeding without a quorum, unless one of my Republican colleagues wants to object to our proceeding without a quorum. And let me say that as soon as a quorum is present, I will note it for the record. We're just going to proceed now. What we need is one more member for a quorum. Well, we've got a quorum present, so I take back everything I just said. And I don't thank you any longer, Alcee, either. Yeah, I take that back. We're here for consideration of H.R. 658, the FAA Reauthorization Reform Act of 2011. We're awaiting the arrival of a distinguished ranking member, Mr. Rahal, but we're happy to have the chairman of the full committee and the subcommittee chairman and ranking members. And so let's proceed with my very good friend from Winter Park, distinguished chair of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. And let me say that any prepared statement that you have, I think it's on there, any prepared statement that you have will appear in the record in its entirety. And that's fine. It's working. We got everything under control here. And we will enter your prepared remarks. And here is Mr. Rahal. So I just introduced you. No, you're late. You're not just in time. We've been waiting for you. I've been dithering around up here waiting for your arrival, Nick. So
I apologize.
We're just getting ready. We're just getting ready to proceed with Chairman Mica. So, Mr. Chairman, your prepared remarks are under the record, and we welcome your summary.
Well, thank you. This is an important piece of legislation. FAA and our aviation industry oversee 9.2% of the nation's economy. So I view this as probably one of the most important jobs, Bill. We've had 17 extensions. We had to do one extension to get to this point. I hope we don't have to do another. Committed to get this job done. This bill also reflects the attitude of people who we represent, who change the dynamics of Congress and asked us to do more with less, to cut spending, to look for ways to do things more efficiently, more economically, and we've tried to achieve that in this legislation. We take the levels to 2008 levels, and we think that we can do this and save $4 billion, $1 billion for each of the next 4 years of this authorization. We do so, I think, and we also have some provisions in here not to compromise or to lose any safety positions, but try to trim some of the bureaucracy and, again, streamline some of the procedures and agencies, which I think every federal agency can do. We have a manager's amendment, and I can wait to explain that at the appropriate time.
Oh, please proceed.
You want me to do that now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, the manager's amendment makes some technical amendments and changes, and we deal with unmanned aircraft systems, ADS-B readiness verification, flight attendant fatigue, FAA access to criminal records, databases, even musical instruments. We had a number of requests from members to put different provisions in here. We tried to accommodate a bipartisan request. We do have some honest differences, and I welcome your evaluation. I think there's about 50 amendments that have been
47.
47, okay. I welcome your evaluation. My objection to any of them would be if they well, of course, aren't germane, if they provide a mandate and a cost, additional cost, expand the size and scope of government. I think those would be my major objections, but I think a fair, open consideration, even with some of the amendments I will not support, is in order, and I think on our side of the aisle we've tried to provide that forum. So that's a little bit about the bill, a little bit about the manager's amendment, and I urge your adoption of both, and again, the appropriate amendments that we
Well, thank you very
consider.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your thoughtful remarks. Mr. Rahal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill has provoked some major differences, not only across party aisles, but within each side of the aisle as well. I think it was demonstrated during committee, and it will once again on the floor. The bill does drastically reduce funding for critical aviation programs that I fear will impact safety, will impact jobs, it will impact airport development, it will impact critical economic development, especially across many rural parts of our country. The majority's message, and I appreciate Chairman Mica saying this as many times as he had, he said it in my congressional district when he came there, that we must do more with less. But I think it's important to note, as he heard in my congressional district while he was there, or in the state of West Virginia, and as we heard from each of the witnesses that testified before our Aviation Subcommittee's reauthorization earlier this year, that with less funding, we will do less, not more. H.R. 658 does cut funding, as the Chairman has said, to 0.8 levels at a time when we need to be making more investments in our nation's infrastructure. This bill also contains what I call the poison pill provision, which repeals the national mediation rule on fair and democratic union elections that barely survived the committee's markup by one vote. Democrats and Republicans are alike opposed to that provision. And it basically says that in an election for a union, those votes that do not show up, or those that are eligible to vote, would be counted as no votes. Mr. Chairman, I would ask how many of us would be here today if registered voters in our district that did not show up were counted as no votes against us. Not a fair way to conduct these elections. Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, the bill also sunsets essential air service, and that's what I mean about devastation to rural parts of our country and so many of these small rural airports that are the engines for economic development, except with two exemptions to this sunsetting of EAS, Alaska and Hawaii. Further, the bill would create, I fear, serious jeopardy to our efforts to modernize the air traffic control system, the so-called next-gen system. That is not going to provide our air travelers any more measure of safety in a time that we see more problems in our air traffic control, i.e. just last week here in Washington. Now is not the time to put in jeopardy further modernization and further jobs that are needed to make our airways safe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham.
Well, I thank you very much for expediting consideration of this long overdue piece of legislation. I support what the chairman said with regard to making as many amendments that are germane and relevant and not overlapping possible. I hope you allow a reasonable amount of time for debate, but not an excessive amount of time for debate of each of the amendments. And we're determined to work in a fair way in carrying the debate forward on the bill. This, despite what was just said, is largely a bipartisan bill. It was almost agreed to in conference last session. It's much needed. It will increase safety when it's passed or accelerate steps toward improving safety, and we can debate the various merits of the bill on the floor, but I'd urge a rule that accommodates reasonable amendments by members from both parties.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, let me say that we are asking for an open rule on this legislation. We want members to have an opportunity to offer their amendments and to be heard and to have up or down votes on our amendments. As Chairman Mica, and much to his credit, he has worked very hard to try and expedite this bill and fast-track it. Mr. Petri just said that we, by and large, it was a bipartisan bill. In 2007, 2009, and again last year, the bill that we passed out of the House, but unfortunately we could not reach an agreement with the Senate and conference. But this bill that has been introduced in this Congress is different in several respects from the bill that passed the House of Representatives in a bipartisan manner. Number one, the funding levels are cut back to 2008 levels, and the AIP funding is cut back even further beyond 2008 levels. It's about a $2 billion cut in the airport improvement program. It's my hope that when we get to conference that we can produce a bill that all of us can support. I have concerns about funding levels. As I said in the markup, I think every federal agency can, in fact, and should, in fact, reduce federal spending. but we should not reduce it in areas where it affects safety and security of the American people. We had the current administrator of the FAA testify, and we had the former administrator under President Bush testify before the subcommittee. And Marion Blakey, who was the administrator under President Bush, said, with the prospects of going back to 2008 funding, and I quote, "This prospect is really devastating to jobs and to our future if we really have to roll back to 2008 levels and stop NextGen in its tracks." That was her testimony before the subcommittee. I have other concerns. The ranking member, Mr. Rahal, expressed concerns about the Essential Air Service for rural America. It is phased out, sunset in 3 years. And also the National Mediation Board provision, Section 903, that Mr. LaTourette and I will be testifying before you and asking that you make that amendment in order. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costello. We appreciate it, and thanks to all of you for your service on something that's very important, and obviously almost every member of Congress, and frankly every member of Congress, because even if they live within, or take the train or drive to work here, they still engage in travel, and obviously our constituents who are traveling all over the country and around the world look to a safe, secure FAA structure, and we know that air traffic controllers have been in the news just recently with what happened out at National Airport, and there's obviously the safety of our fellow Americans is of paramount importance, and I appreciate that, and I believe that from my assessment that this has come down to a good piece of legislation. And I know that the request that you just made, Mr. Costello, for an open rule is we are looking to have a very open process. I will say that 47 amendments were submitted to the Rules Committee, bipartisan, Democrat and Republican alike. And the one thing I will say is that we are doing our doggonedest to try to make there is overlapping, and then the concerns that Chairman Mica raised on mandates, additional spending being of concern to us. But we're going to try our doggonedest to make every single issue area at least in order, because again, if there's been 2 or 3 amendments filed on the exact same issue, we're not going to make all of those in order. But that's what we're striving to do right now. We've been working on that throughout the day, and so I just again want to express my appreciation to all of you for your very hard work, and looking forward to, as we like to say, and as the Speaker reminds us, to allow the House to work its will. Ms. Fox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions, but I want to express my appreciation also to the members of the committee, because I do know they work hard and that this is a sensitive issue to all members. And so I echo the comments that you've made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, let me thank you all for being here, and I'm a little surprised, Mr. Mike and Mr. Petra, that you're not asking for an open rule, because I remember you coming before this committee on many occasions asking for an open rule, and I think if we want to try our doggonedest to make this an open process, we ought to make it an open rule. It's very, very simple. And amendments that add to the deficit anyway, I mean, under the rules, I think would be subject to a point of order. I mean, and I assume that as this thing goes forward, that there'll be people who will come up with amendments or might want to have second-degree amendments. So, I mean, we can easily give you an open rule, and we'll find out what happens. But we will certainly support, Mr. Costello, your request for an open rule. We need an FAA reauthorization bill, and I supported the previous efforts. I do think that this is underfunded, and I appreciate the fact that we want to get the deficit under control. But not all areas are created equal. There are some areas where you can cut in, and there are some areas where you need to invest in. And for the sake of our economy, I mean, I would think investing in infrastructure, such as the stuff that the FAA reauthorization bill supports, is important. We need modern, airports, and we need, the best equipment, and we need, in some cases, to expand because of our increasing trade and increasing tourism. I mean, it's a kind of an engine, a catalyst to help jobs grow. So I am, concerned because I think that in the long run, if you do this right, you end up, creating more jobs. You end up creating more development. You end up then being able to have the funds to start paying down our deficit and our debt. Yeah, the question I would ask, though, is this poison pill that's in the bill. You know, you had the National Mediation Board, you know, ruled that with regard to the collective bargaining, fair democratic representation elections, where the outcome of races is decided by the majority of those who cast ballots, just like when we stand for re-election. All those who don't vote and who are registered don't get counted as no against us. If they don't want to vote, then they don't get their voices heard. But you have changed that in this bill now to require a supermajority of everyone eligible to vote, so that those who don't vote are not automatically counted as no. Why?
May I
Yeah, yes.
address the question raised by the gentleman? Well, simply because of the unfairness of changing 70 years of procedure and law and rules. I know when Mr. Obama was able to get 3 out of the 2 votes on the National Mediation Board, and they took this step, I think they did it also in a very unfair manner. First of all, they changed 70 years, and I defy anyone to tell me that people haven't been able to organize or unionize in the transportation industry. What they did is they opened it one way that you can, by whoever shows up, vote to have someone required to join a union. Now, it's always been a majority of the members of that union. It's sort of like me saying, I want you to, vote and then also contribute to the Republican Party, the dues that I assess you.
Excuse me, why is it okay?
Well, I haven't gotten to the unfairness part.
When we stand for election, those who are registered to vote, who don't vote, don't get counted as no against.
Yeah, but
why is that? Why is
you aren't required to pay union dues and the other things that are incumbent on union membership. The other thing, too, is the unfairness of this is that they left in place the decertification, which requires a majority of all those to decertify. So talk about unfairness. I don't think that anything I've seen in my lifetime or political career, I favor people having the right to vote to join a union. But I think it should be, again, a majority of all those who are affected to force that union membership.
I don't get it. I mean,
the decertification is particularly offensive.
What this seems like is that what the Republican majority wants to do. Right? We see what's happening in Wisconsin. We see what's happening in Ohio. I mean, this is yet another attempt to undermine the rights of workers.
I view it.
I'm happy to yield to the gentleman.
Let me just say that on this notion that comparing compulsory union dues with taxes, we know that nearly half the American people do not pay 1 penny of federal income tax. Yes, they pay their FICA tax, they pay a sales tax, but nearly half the American people don't pay a penny in federal income tax, and so I think it's actually a specious argument to claim.
Right, but their vote doesn't count as a no.
I thank my
they don't
friend
vote.
for yielding.
I mean, in anybody's election here, when
well, again, it's worked very well for 70 years. We have huge memberships in our transportation unions, and then going back, continuous bites at the apple, and then the little trick of the decertification requires a majority of the total membership. Come on, guys, you know that's not fair.
So we're going to ignore the National Mediation Board, and Republicans on the committee know best. And
70 years under Democrats and Republicans,
we're going to change the rules.
It has worked very well, and there's ample union membership and ample opportunity to continue as we've done in the past, in my belief. And then again, the unfairness to decertify. Again, it's almost humorous that they set it up in this fashion.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. One, the decertification process really has nothing to do. We're talking about apples and oranges here. We're talking about, I think in the markup, you know, I offered an amendment when we marked this bill up. We lost it by 1 vote. And I think it was summed up pretty well, the arguments on both sides, both pro and con, by Candace Miller from Michigan, when she said this isn't a pro-union or an anti-union vote. This is about fairness. And that's what it's about. When we talk about decertification, if you don't like the decertification process, we ought to address that separately from fair elections. This is the most undemocratic process. And I understand, Chairman Mike is right. It was in place for many, many years. There was a time when women couldn't vote in this country. There was a time when we had a poll tax in this country for many, many years. But we corrected those things, and this needs to be corrected. It has been, and it was corrected by the National Mediation Board, and we should support the current. Finally, let me say that just for the record, under the new rule, unions have been certified in 53% of the elections. Since the new rules came in, one person, one vote. 53% of the elections unions were certified. Under the old rule, which is what this bill would do, unions were certified in 75% of the elections. So this isn't trying to give unions an advantage. This isn't pro-union, it's not anti-union. This is about fairness.
I appreciate that because to me it looks like there's a pattern developing here, and a pattern that always ends up undermining the rights of workers. So I look forward to seeing this on the floor tomorrow, but I certainly can't support this.
I don't have any questions, except I'd be remiss if I didn't welcome Chairman Ray Hall.
I'm sorry.
He welcomed you.
And
Distracted him.
That's what you said to me the last couple of years as well, all the time.
Where was that?
I don't know, but I wish you were actually back. Actually, you can stay there if you'd send Zoya back. He's the one I'd really like back in resources. But it's good to have you here. It's good to see you again. Thank you.
Make that a rule on your side?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I thank all of our colleagues for their presentation and their extraordinary efforts. I do have a question of my colleague and fellow Floridian, the chairman of the committee. I favor the right of the TSA folk to unionize if they see fit. Do you have a position that you have taken, Mr. Chairman, or would you share with us a position?
Well, it's not part of this legislation, and if I wanted to get into TSA, they wouldn't let me do it because of, again, jurisdictional and germaneness questions. My position is, actually, when I helped craft the law, I put a provision in that allowed unionization of TSA workers. That has been the law. There were two questions that we had to face. One was collective bargaining, and we did not allow collective bargaining, nor did we allow coverage under Title V. I had been chairman of the Civil Service Committee, subcommittee for 4 years, and I found after 4 years that no one who works for the federal government everyone who works for the federal government under Title V, there's no possibility of firing those people because the system is so geared to appeals and process. Usually they get elevated and positioned. So that's why I left that out and would be very opposed. Collective bargaining is something they'll decide. Interestingly enough, I created also in the bill 5 airports under federal supervision with private contractors, all of which, after evaluation, perform statistically significantly better. But you would be surprised to learn that those employees under private screening have had collective bargaining rights and opportunities since almost the beginning, and now they're just talking about it. But as to eligibility for Title V, which I'd be adamantly opposed, because you can't fire anyone. So, yes, I put unionization in. Yes, if they vote to have collective bargaining, they should have that right. The private screeners under federal supervision have already had it and exercised it. And that's also another reason for restarting that program that's been so successful and performed well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't buy my colleague's argument about privatization. I saw the privatization of cultures that developed here on Capitol Hill. Printing would be a good example. We privatized it at some point, and the gentleman that used to work for us, probably most of us get our cards done by him now, and it costs a whole whale of a lot more than when he worked for us. I don't even want to go into a number of other matters that I think foolishly we went down that notion that somehow or another the private sector was going to be able to do better. Listen, I join my our colleague and good friend from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, in asserting that there's a pattern developing in the nation, and I now believe that my colleagues here in the majority are joining that to some degree, and it could best be referenced as union busting, and just call it what it is, whether it's in Wisconsin or my state of Florida or in Ohio is getting ready to even go further than Wisconsin did, and now we come to this provision that I certainly deem unfair. It repeals unionization, election rule changes, implemented in May 2010, and that was done to ensure that a majority of a workforce must vote in favor of unionization. So with regard to this particular measure, I think we're really toying with the fairness of the foundation of democracy with reference to fair elections. And I agree with Mr. Costello that it's not about fairness and not pro-union, not anti-union. As we move forward with the modernizing of our nation's air transportation system, I think all of us agree that safety should remain our number one priority. The consolidation of services and facilities has to be weighed appropriately against changes to system redundancy. Now listen, all of us have to take airplanes and to get to and from our constituencies. I don't believe there's a single one of us that believes that our air traffic system does not need to be improved considerably. I don't believe a single one of us believe that these 40-year and older aircraft, which has to do with whether or not the aircraft industry or the airplane industry can provide newer craft. But eventually, if we're not careful, they're going to start falling out of the sky. And that's what it's all about in one sense of the word. On Saturday, I spoke with two people as I was traveling. One, a gate agent for 30 years at U.S. Air, and he told me about the continuing decline. And I got off of a small craft from Dulles to Fort Lauderdale previous to that on United Airlines. And I had been away, I learned of the fire that had taken place in Miami. And excuse me if I said Fort Lauderdale, I got off of the plane in Miami. And I didn't know about the gas pumping system. And this pilot informed me, not the pilot of the plane, he was a pilot as a passenger going to work. He informed me that it would take 5 hours to truck in the necessary refueling for one of the larger craft. And I thought about the fact that that was an unexpected event, and there are going to be others like it. And I'm not suggesting that you all have not done everything you can with reference to this, but these cuts are going to have dire consequences for the overall nation's infrastructure. And it's also going to have a jobs consideration. I give all of you, especially the chair and the ranking member and the subcommittee chairs, you all have worked hard on all of these things, all of your careers. But the cuts, in my judgment, alone are going to cost us a considerable number of jobs. I don't need to try to quantify, and the USA Gate agent was telling me that when he started, they had 16 people. But how we were talking is, I'm resisting going up to this machine to put my credit card information in it to get a ticket, because I know that it's getting ready to put people out of a job. And I know all of us know that. And it looks like it's going to be more with less. But from 16 to now, he says 2, and he's getting ready to quit. He said, I'm not resigning, I'm quitting. I just am tired of seeing the deterioration. And this is a work of 30 years with this system. I won't carry on, Mr. Chairman. I do suggest that we pay serious attention to what Mr. McGovern just said. Everything in our country is not equal in terms of the priorities that need to take place. But the safety of the flying public is something that, if we are in the business of prioritizing when we must, as we feel we must, cut things, then I would want to put that very, very way down on the list of things. And rather than be in the business of cutting, I would be trying to find ways for us to shift. And I know that's what all of you would argue that you are saying. Shift those things that may be put off and increase those things that are desperately needed. There are too many analogies for me to carry forward. But we've seen it so many times. If we don't front end our infrastructure, we will pay a lot more later. Now, all of you and the chairman of this Rules Committee were here when I came here. And all of you have served with great distinction in this particular arena. But all of you also have seen the continuing deterioration of this system. I hope together we can learn to improve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a brief comment. Our committee places safety number one. One of the reasons we've been pressing to get a bill done. When this bill passes, Chairman Costello, last Congress, I spent many hours in meetings trying to push forward something called Next Gen, or new technology in this area. When this bill passes, it will further that process, and it will create jobs, and it will improve safety, and it will be good for the environment because it will enable us to save 25% of the fuel that the current aviation fleet uses. So we can point the fingers at others, but we also have to recognize our own responsibility in slowing down the process of modernizing our air traffic, and it's placing our international competitiveness in jeopardy, because we've led since the Wright brothers in the world of aviation. But if we don't stick with it, we're going to lose the ball to people in other parts of the world.
Peter, I think you know, and I know Mr. Costello knows, you have no greater supporter in the Next Gen and TRACON than me, and all of you and the chairman and Mr. Ray Hall have been very helpful in South Florida, where I have continuously expressed an ongoing concern. So I'm on your side.
We're glad you're going to have the bill scheduled for Florida consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciated what you all had to say about we always strive to do more with less, but sometimes we end up doing less with less. As a fellow who's only been on the job 90 days, I'm getting a lot of less conversations, because apparently folks who were here before were spending more. Would you say in the tough decisions that you had to make, and I can't tell you as a freshman how much I appreciate you all making those tough decisions, because you could have just said it can't be done. You could have just punted on it and said, well, if we don't throw some more money at it, it's failure is imminent. But you got it done. Going to Mr. Hastings' point, would you say that you prioritized safety in the mark that we're going to be voting on tomorrow?
I would, and we've also put a provision in that if we do have to reduce any programs, that the safety programs should not be them. Of course, we're not finished with the bill. We still have to go to conference with the Senate, but safety will remain our top priority. Let me just tell you, too, that some of the things we've done in the past, we have changed. I had the honor to be the aviation subcommittee chair. In developmental programs, we used to have FAA spending billions of dollars trying to develop technology in an awkward process that spent great deals of money. They would come back to us every couple of years and say, just give us a few billion more and we'll have these test tubes taken out and we'll modernize the system. We found what happened is the private sector, because of the cumbersome acquisition and development, just the federal process is so cumbersome. The private sector would have developed technology that far exceeded what we were doing. You could buy it off the shelf with better technology, better utilization, designed to utilization so that people could actually see an improvement and would buy it. And we were left with all these billions of dollars spent, time wasted. So even in the development of NextGen, we're trying to get the government out of the way, and we can save money. We actually spend less money. Ended up spending less money on the development and more money on technology and equipment and advance the system. And I think we can continue to do the same things. You have to be innovative. But just like the poor folks out there that are struggling to make ends meet, they find a better way, and that's part of American creativity and ingenuity. And I'm going to work with Mr. Rail to make sure that happens.
That's great. That's great to hear.
If I might respond to the gentleman's question as well, I don't think any of us are casting aspersions upon the majority's concern about safety, or anybody in this body's concern about safety. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying, at least what this particular gentleman is saying, is that due to the cutbacks and due to the actually doing less with less, that we are delaying further safety improvements that could be made, greater strides in safety. And safety ought to be our number one concern, whether it's in airline flying or coal mining or driving a vehicle or whatever mode of transportation or energy production we may be talking about. And I think it's also important to note that on February 9th of this year, when we had a hearing before our committee, that witness after witness representing the aerospace industry, general aviation and manufacturers, general aviation pilots, airports, air traffic controllers, FAA managers, all testified. And I stress that Congress could not roll back FAA fundings to fiscal year 08 levels without harming safety-sensitive programs or hampering the industry. End quote.
Well, I guess there are lots of tough decisions about where to get those dollars. Mr. Hastings said all of us fly. Of course, all of us don't fly. Perhaps those of us who do fly should be paying a higher share of that and taking more of that burden off the backs of taxpayers who aren't flying. Those of us who benefit, perhaps we can share a larger part of that burden. But I'll certainly wait to see what comes out of committee along those lines. I wanted to go back to something Mr. McGovern said. I was curious talking about the poison pill. I thought I understood him to say that you all were changing long-standing rules and regulations with regard to unionization, but instead what it sounds like is there had been a provision in place for 70 years, and it was just reversed in May 10th or May 2010. Is that what was said? That's right. So this bill is actually going to change what was recently changed and take us back to that provision that was working so successfully for those 70 years?
What's astounding now, I'm not sure, maybe is it proper to ask Mr. Costello, did you say that more under the previous system had converted than to what they've done so far? Was that
under the old rule in 2009? Yeah. Unions were certified in 75% of the elections. Yeah. Under the new rule, where every vote is counted,
So I can
There have been
expect
fewer
union
certifications,
support in the next
53.
election, probably, because we go back to the one where
That
they were
does
getting
seem to
more
be the
people.
conclusion.
I would assume that you would get union support as all of the rest
But
of us
it
do.
sounded like I was setting democracy and fairness and
Fairness is one
and
person,
everything
one.
back to the Stone Ages.
Well, I wanted to ask
one person, one vote.
about fairness, because this is not my area of expertise, but what was the state of affairs during those last 70 years? The threshold was the same for certifying and for decertifying?
Yes, that's true.
But today, there's a heavy threshold for decertifying, but a newly implemented very light threshold for certifying?
Well, if you had 1,000 folks that belonged to a union and 30 showed up and 16 voted to unionize, then everybody would be paying their union dues, et cetera. But to decertify, you would have to have 501 folks vote to decertify. So it does sound to me like it's not fair, and I think Mr. Costello just said, confirmed how well the old system worked in expanding a union representation, so workers could be fairly represented and have a vote that honestly reflected their commitment to paying dues and belonging to the union and all those.
Well, just to make sure I'm clear, I come from a right-to-work state in Georgia. You're saying if I had an employer in my state, employed 1,000 people, that not only would my employer have to bear the cost of funding this election, but if folks didn't show up for the election, those who were in favor, if they showed up, and folks who were opposed just didn't show up because they're just going about their business trying to support their families, that it just takes a majority of those who choose to show up for this election that does nothing but certify a union?
It's quite different than from election of, say, a representative in Congress or a local office. You do have to pay dues. There's a whole regimen of things that the union does decide for you. Again, it's part of union membership. And I have no problem, as I said, I put in the TSA provision, and most people think that they're voting now to unionize. That's not true. They've had that right. I gave them, made sure they had that right, and I think they should have that right. And I welcome a vote, too, on this if we're going to consider it. We considered it in the committee. I'd love to see a vote on this, and then we'll decide if 218 votes wins this argument in the House. That would be half of the...
It will take a true majority in the House to confirm that.
436.
Fantastic. Like I said, I just tremendously appreciate you all doing the heavy lifting. I'm on those planes absolutely every week, just like you all are. Safety's at the top of my list of concerns, and a viable system that continues to build jobs is as well. So thank you for the very hard work that you've done.
Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate your hard work. And we now would like to welcome a panel from the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure. I see in the room Mr. Lobiondo, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Schuster, and Ms. Richardson. And I'd like to ask the four of you to come forward. And why don't we begin with Mr. Lobiondo?
Thank you very much.
Let me just, we'll begin with Mr. Lobiondo, and then we will proceed. We'll go to Ms. Hirono, and then to Mr. Schuster and Ms. Richardson. So,
thank you very much.
If you're prepared, if any of you all have prepared remarks without objection, they'll appear in the record, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is very simple. It allows the FAA to assist in establishing the next generation of research and development center of excellence. So I know in the interest of the committee's time, I would be happy to read my full statement, although it is modified and shortened. I'd be happy to answer questions. But I think Mr. Mica supports the amendment. Mr. Costello supports the amendment. It's non-controversial. It does not cost any money. Big factor for all of us. And there's been a lot of emphasis on the next generation of air traffic control in discussion of the whole FAA bill. This is a force multiplier in being able to allow us to produce a product that's going to give the American people a much better bang for their buck. So I can answer more questions or go into a little bit more brief detail. You tell me what you'd like, Madam Chair.
I think, Mr. Lobiondo, that we're always grateful for
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Statement was submitted. If anybody has any additional questions they think of afterwards, ask me on the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope that I get treated the way Mr. Loviando was, short and sweet. I do have two amendments to offer, and my understanding is that I am able to talk about both of them. Is that all right? My first amendment is Amendment 27. It has to do with airline cockpit smoke. And this is nothing new. It's a problem that has been around for a while. And in fact, my colleague from Hawaii, Senator Inoue, introduced legislation to address this matter as long ago as 1993. And the basic issue is, of course, just what it says, smoke in the cockpit. Is there a way to ensure the safety of the public and to make sure that the pilot can see where he or she is going with all the smoke in the cockpit? And at the time that my colleague introduced the bill 20 years or so ago, he said that my colleagues, it would be troubled to learn that over the last 20 years, there have been a dozen accidents on commercial aircraft in which dense, continuous smoke in the airline cockpit may have been a factor. In these accidents, over 850 people have died. And that was in 1993. Almost another 20 years has passed since that time. And since then, even more lives have been lost in accidents where cockpit smoke was a cause or a factor. And this includes the September 3rd, 2010 incident in Dubai, where a UPS cargo flight crashed, killing 2 pilots. Reports on the accident indicate that the pilot was not able to see any of his instruments due to the amount of smoke in the cockpit. And some will say that while tragic, these incidents are rare. Let me just cite, though, to FAA's bulletin released October 6, 2010, where they say that they have received over 900 reports a year of smoke or fumes in the cabin or cockpit. An average of 900 incidents in 365 days does not seem to me to be a rare occurrence. And in the same bulletin, the FAA wrote, unfortunately, with all of the safeguards built into modern aircraft and operational requirements placed on the air carriers to maintain the aircraft in accordance with the instructions for continued airworthiness and the operator's continuous worthiness maintenance programs, smoke and fumes in the cockpit and the cabin is still a serious problem. And I think that the national response to this situation has been inadequate. We need a comprehensive, up-to-date analysis of the issue and real action to protect our pilots and passengers. So my amendment would simply establish an aviation rulemaking committee, an ARC, made up of representatives from aviation, labor, industry, other experts, and their task would be to carefully examine and provide regulatory recommendations on the issue of cockpit smoke. I am not mandating that there be a rule on this. I'm saying that this aviation rulemaking committee should review what's gone on and to make appropriate recommendations so that we can address this problem adequately. Mm-hmm. Yes. My second one is Amendment 28. I start by saying that Hawaii is the most isolated archipelago in the world. It is the only U.S. state made up completely of islands. In my district, I represent 7 inhabited islands. There are 4 counties in Hawaii, all of which are separated by bodies of water. Air travel is the fastest and most effective means and often the only means of transportation between our islands. And it's the mode of transportation that we rely on for moving goods and other cargo and our daily mail also. There are 15 airports operated by the Airports Division of the Hawaii Department of Transportation, and they are responsible for maintaining the safe and efficient running of our facilities, and they accommodate approximately 25 million passengers a year. This is a tremendous responsibility and an ongoing challenge. It's because of the fundamental role that air travel plays in our day-to-day lives and commerce of Hawaii that Congress saw fit to provide the state of Hawaii with an exception from charging passenger facility fees on inter-island flights. Inter-island flights are those flights that are between islands. And this exemption is important for Hawaii residents. Without it, for many, the daily commute, and I know many people who literally commute from island to island to go to their jobs, it would be unduly burdensome. To use an analogy, it would be as though one of your constituents got into your car to go to work. You had to pay $4.50, which is the charge that we charge for PFCs, just to leave your driveway, and then you have to pay another $4.50 to upon your return. And that is why this particular exception for Hawaii under the current law was so important. Now, the way the PFC works is that every state or every airport that charges these PFCs get a certain amount of money under the AIP, which is modified by what PFCs they charge. And these AIP grants are awarded to each state based on the statutory formula. So these are formula amounts. And the formulas are cut by either 50% or 75%, depending on if the state or basically the state opts to collect PFCs. So for airports that assess PFCs on 100% of their passengers, this arrangement can work well. But notice, because we have an exception for inter-island travel, we are not charging PFCs on 100% of our passengers. So therefore, there are two airports that collect PFCs in Hawaii on a portion of our passengers, and that's at the Honolulu International Airport, where 38% of our passengers are inter-island travelers. And in Kahului Airport on Maui, 51% of the passengers are inter-island passengers. Therefore, the $4.50 PFC being assessed in Honolulu is only being paid by 62% of our passengers, and on Maui that number is only 49%. But based on the current formula, the Hawaii Department of Transportation, because our formula is calculated as though we're getting PFCs from 100% of our passengers, our DOT calculates that the state is losing approximately $5.7 million this year in AIP formula funds. My amendment would change the formula under which Hawaii's PFCs and entitlements are calculated to correct this inequity. All we want is a fair share of the AIP program. And Hawaii's airports would still be subject to the 75% reduction as any other airport charging a $4.50 PFC. The calculation would simply take into account the percentage of passengers traveling inter-island and therefore not paying the PFCs. And I also want to point out that this is not a windfall for the state, and it's certainly not an earmark, because under our House rules, the definition of an earmark is essentially as any member requested federal assistance to a targeted entity or locality, and in quotes, other than through a statutory or administrative formula-driven or competitive award process, end quote. That is exactly what the AIP is. It's a statutory, it's a formula process. Therefore, I view this minor change of the statutory formula as just what it is, a change that will revise a formula that unintentionally treats Hawaii unfairly in comparison with every other state. I have approached the Federal Aviation Administration for technical assistance in drafting my amendment, and they readily conceded that this is an issue of inequality, unequal treatment for Hawaii. And they're not coming out and endorsing this, but they acknowledge that this is very unfair to Hawaii. So in closing, I'd like to thank the committee for hearing this testimony, and I hope that you will support this amendment, and certainly I urge its support on the floor. I stand ready to answer any questions. Thank you.
I think so, but whatever the Madam Chair wishes, I'll abide by her ruling. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My amendment is a two-part amendment dealing with the process of issuing FAA regulations or rulemaking, and hopefully with this amendment will improve that process. Part one size does not fit all. And before proposing or issuing a regulation, the administrator must analyze the different industry segments and tailor any regulations to the characteristics of separate segments. And those segments would be defined by the administrator. This takes into account that the U.S. aviation industry is composed of different segments that have differing operational characteristics. The FAA Administrator, Randy Babbitt, has pointed out that one-size-fits-all approach does not work. And in 2009, Administrator Babbitt said in rulemaking, not only does one size not fit all, but it's unsafe to think that it can. And in those different segments, passenger is different than cargo and different than general aviation. This amendment attempts to fulfill that objective. The second part fulfills President Obama's goals of regulatory reform. The second part of the amendment ensures that the proposed regulations are not overly burdensome or cumbersome by requiring the FAA to conduct rulemakings in accordance with certain principles. One, a reasoned cost-benefit analysis to be prepared. Two, an assessment of the impact on the economy. And three, a mandate that any regulation is based on the best available science and technical information. This amendment does not single out or attempt to gut any particular regulation. This is a process reform based on issues raised by the FAA Administrator and the President. It's not retroactive, and there are some concerns out there that this language would apply to ongoing rulemakings. That's not our intent. We're happy to revise this amendment to address those concerns so that any ongoing rulemaking it's not going to apply to that. This is going forward. This amendment does not define industry segments. As I said, we allow the FAA Administrator to interpret and appropriately define what industry segments are. And this amendment does not require that benefits outweigh the costs. Rather, it requires a reasoned analysis so we have a good understanding as we move forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the amendment. I have a second amendment, but I, at this point, want to withdraw it. I believe there may be a budget point of order on it. This amendment deals with EAS, and I've talked with the chairman. It's extremely important to me and to many rural communities, airport EAS service, and we intend to work with the chairman as we move forward on the floor and into conference. So I withdraw that amendment. I believe it's Amendment 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and all the brave members of this committee. I always think of you as angels in the house. I come before you to discuss my amendment, which would direct the FAA Administrator within 180 days, giving consumers an option, and I want to stress option, for text message and email notification from their carriers in the event of a delayed flight or a canceled flight. The reason for the amendment is that all carriers do not offer this service, and those that do often only offer them to a select group of people who might happen to be a part of their membership clubs. We can all tell horror stories of delayed and canceled flights, seeing our constituents laying on the floor and on the chairs just for a simple providing information could have been avoided. Given the advances in technology and the widespread use of cell phones and smartphones nationwide, it is time to provide a 21st century solution for the American flying public. My amendment will help to ensure that the traveling public will receive timely notification for a flight delay or a cancellation. I need not tell you flight delays and cancellations continue to be a problem. In fact, the Bureau of Transportation has reported that in 2010 alone, 1 in every 5 flights were delayed. There are many reasons for a delay of why it would occur: poor weather, connecting flight problems, or sometimes just a previous flight was used and it came in late. It's not uncommon that airlines have prior knowledge for an upcoming delay. The airline could send passengers who requested it, and again, this is an option, not a requirement, who requested it an email or a text message, which would give those passengers more time to make the appropriate plans to go on a different route or to contact their family so that they know what their status is. It's important to note that this amendment does not call for the aviation carriers to provide the service at a cost of their own. Rather, by making a 411 informational call and the receiver pays the charge for that incoming call. Likewise, a person who would receive a text message or an email it would be the cost that comes on their side to provide. Now, most airlines today are required, in fact, to collect certain information. So to simply ask the person who's requesting for a ticket if you'd like to receive email notification and what is your email address or number to be texted to is a very minor request in light of the huge inconvenience that it provides to the flying public. The flying public, their families, and businesses, many people who are going to meetings. I was just on a flight that was delayed 3 hours, and if you know a flight's delayed, you can reach out to another carrier and possibly still get there on time. My amendment provides that information improves efficiency and reduce costs, and of course, peace of mind. I urge the committee to make and order the Richardson Amendment. I thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Madam Chairman, I would just ask if Ms. Richardson, I have the great pleasure of having Delta Airlines very close to my home, and they do exactly what it is that you're suggesting. It's changed the world in which I live because it provides all of those benefits that you suggest. But though in the very competitive airline industry that we have today, I'm thinking perhaps Delta has a competitive advantage over its peers because they are doing the extremely customer-friendly things that you would ask the FAA to mandate that everyone do. What, given the competitive nature of the airline industry, why do you think that folks require the FAA impetus to act rather than, as Delta has done, do it because it's just good business?
Well, that's an excellent question, sir, and I would give you an analogy of a car. Some vehicles have anti-lock brakes, some don't, but it's in a situation if there's a weather as a problem, sometimes we who are the makers of the law should ensure that if something is going to help with the safety of the public and actually eventually reduce costs, it should be something we encourage be available to all. I would say to you that having the right to know that your flight is delayed is a basic right that a person who pays a ticket should be entitled to know that and not waste their time, which is money. And it involves safety as well. You have people who come with children. You've heard the horror stories where people don't have enough bottles and diapers, and I mean it is beyond, I think, a competitive issue. It's a basic need that people have.
Thinking about, again, my friends at Delta who stepped up to meet this challenge without a federal mandate, is there any danger that what FAA comes out with in 180 days is going to require Delta to go back and redo their system from scratch to meet some sort of new unforeseen requirements?
Absolutely no, sir. It's intended for those who are utilizing the program that it would enable them to offer it, again, to any customer, but they would not have to create a new system, just simply to be able to offer a service either through email or through texting, and however they choose to provide that would be their choice.
Okay. I thank the gentlelady.
I would hope for your support, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. I do think you guys heed to a higher calling than the majority of the House and do our respect. Thank you. It's true. No problem. I wish you well. I'll be seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Richardson. I see the chairman coming in now, and I will relinquish the seat. But I think if Ms. Waters, Mr. Schweikert, and Mr. Brett have come up, we'd like to finish up before we have to go down the vote. Oh. Yeah. Come here.
You're senior.
No.
She's not that old.
But
everyone outranks me, so.
Nice to see the four of you here. Thank you very much. First, thanks to Ms. Fox. And I will ask that any prepared statement that you have be included in the record, and we welcome your summary. And I don't know if we can get completed before we have this vote, but it just started. So, Mr. Costello, is this
He's back.
Groundhog Day, or
He's back. He's helping.
I thought I saw you. You left before I left, and now you're back. Now that I've come back, I'm confused. Very, very. I know you didn't do well enough that you want to try again. Is that maybe it? Well, let's begin with you then.
He's my assistant. Actually, he's helping me, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. LaTourette, please.
Well, thank you
proceed.
so much, and I'm not going to belabor the points. During Mr. Costello's presentation, Mr. Mikas, the issue has been laid pretty well forward. I'm not asking anybody on the Rules Committee to like my amendment, to vote for my amendment. I'm asking you to make it in order. And let me just tell you the history of this thing and why this is just a wrong-headed policy on behalf of our party to include it in the bill. I was still on the T&I committee when this reauthorization, which again, if you think about the reauthorization, is to take us to the next generation of air travel to keep us competitive in the world. So we send the bill and it dies. Now, why did it die? Because at that moment in time, there was a fight between Federal Express and UPS and the Bush administration relative to the contract with the air traffic controllers. So we had no bill. We had a number of extensions. Then Costello works really hard with Micah and Oberstar and Petri, and they produce another bill. And it was a good bill that I think a lot of us supported. Goes over to the Senate, and it dies. Why does it die? Because of PFC considerations, and you had some senators that wanted to take the side of one airline and expand the scope of flights out of Washington National so they could get safely home to their districts and with nonstop flights. That's why we don't have next generation in this country. So now we go and fast forward to this bill. Again, I think it's a decent piece of legislation, but out of nowhere, you get this National Mediation Board thing dropped in. It is a poke in the eye of unions. I don't care what anybody says. You may not like the provision. You don't like the provision, you change the provision. And what the NMB did was they had hearings, they took comments, they published it in the Federal Register, they voted, and they changed the rule. You don't like it? Go through the same process. To drop this in without hearings, without any explanation, and just to say we don't like unions. And now, quite frankly, I'm glad to hear Mr. Woodall's observations because I suppose he'll abstain. This is being pushed by one airline. Delta Airlines wants this provision. And I'm going to tell you something. Delta Airlines has had 4 elections since this new rule went into place. The unions have lost all 4. So I don't get it. So you want to change the decertification? Change the decertification. But to say that we're going to have an election where if 100 people show up and 70 of them vote for one way or the other, you don't win, that's just crazy. And so make it in order. We'll debate it, and we'll see what happens.
I would just associate myself with Mr. LaTourette's remarks. And the last final point I'd make, we've had 18 extensions. The industry has been operating under a bill that was passed in 2003. And I would just tell you, if this provision stays in this bill, we're going to be back on the floor with extensions in the future because there is no way that the Senate is going to pass this with the provision in it. So I'd ask you to make it in order. Let's have an open debate on the floor and an up or down vote.
Thank you very much. My California colleague, Ms. Waters.
Thank you very much.
Committee. Very happy to have you here, and I know you got several amendments.
Thank you. I do have 3 amendments. I'd like to thank you and the ranking member, Louise Slaughter, and all of the members of the committee for allowing me to be here today. I've come here to request that the Rules Committee allow me to offer 3 amendments, H.R. 2, H.R. 658, the FAA Reauthorization Act, and waive all points of order against these amendments. My first amendment would require the Secretary of Transportation to establish a working group on FAA consolidation. Many of you have gone through the complaints about consolidation and how it's done and how it breaks up families and how it does not take into consideration a lot of safety issues. So this amendment would simply say establish a real working group that would include individuals who represent FAA employees, air carriers, general aviation, and airport community. They would review the proposals to consolidate, obtain input from affected stakeholders and comments from the public, et cetera, et cetera. It's a way by which we're not saying that consolidation should not be done, but it should be thought through, and it should have people involved who are going to be impacted by it. My second amendment is Waters 34. It is Airport Community Consultation Amendment. Let me tell you why I'm offering this amendment. I've gone through airport expansion problems at LAX in Los Angeles, and I hear about them all over the country. One of the things, the community groups who would like to be involved in discussions about these expansions, these changes, these operations, is oftentimes they're not invited in. They oftentimes don't have money to organize, and they are not taken into consideration when they're making runway changes, all of that. And this simply would say, listen, involve the community, get them involved. It doesn't cost anything to you, but it certainly can make you a good neighbor. My final amendment, that is Waters 020, is about LAX, and it's about specific things that are going on at LAX. LAX is currently in the process of realigning the runways on the north side of the airport. Depending upon the runway configuration that is chosen, this realignment could have a tremendous impact upon the local community. Mr. Chairman, you're familiar with Westchester and Playa del Rey, and if they extend these runways further north, it's just going to run their lives. They have not been consulted, and I think that LAX should have the community involved in those kind of decisions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waters. Very much appreciate you being here. Let me just say that we have one vote now on the Holmes-Norton amendment on the floor. Then we're going to have debate on the motion to recommit. So what I'd like to do is continue with the hearing, if we can, because we have additional witnesses. Have you gentlemen voted already? You have. You both have voted already. Well, let me just say, we'd like to hear from Mr. Schweiker. We've got time. And then if we can, take questions, and then for you all, and then just say to members, as soon as you vote, we'll keep things going, and hope we'll be able to be completed before we vote on the motion.
If there are no questions, I don't have to bother you.
You're not bothering me at all, Maxine. You never bother me. Yeah. Don't worry. We've got a lineup here that far exceeds your ability to perform here. I just want to assure you of that. So, yeah. I mean, even all the way to the end of our line here. So let's hear from Mr. Schweikert, see if there are any questions for our members who are here, and then we'll take off. Mr. Schweikert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is my very first time to even step foot in this august room. So if I make mistakes, just please throw things at me. I learn better that way. Mr. Chairman, I'm here on an amendment that I hope you'll all rule in order, DCA perimeter rule. And for apparently those of you who've been members here, you've probably seen variations of this over and over and over and over. Right now, federal law restricts the departures and arrivals for nonstop flights to and from airports that are beyond 1,250 miles from Washington National. These restrictions are typically referred to as the perimeter rule. The amendment makes some changes in that for long-haul airlines that already have slots at DCA.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Schweikert. I appreciate that. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Hastings? Mr. Woodall?
I just want to welcome my friend Mr. Schweikert to this august room this time around.
Very special. Look at the art you have.
That's credit to our chairman, but I have no questions.
So you're not welcoming our other three distinguished
Well, in fairness, I believe they've been here before, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Webster.
That's his friend.
Thanks to the four of you for being here, and let's proceed. Which of you guys has voted? Nobody's voted. Okay. Well, let me just say that thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate it. We are not going to recess. We're going to wait until one of my colleagues who has voted comes back, unless one of you all wants to run downstairs and vote and then come right back up, because we're going to have a full debate on the motion to recommit, then a 15-minute vote after that. So probably the next vote will be in about a half hour. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for being here. Gentlemen, Schiff, Mr. Sherman, my two California colleagues, happy to welcome both of you. And let me say that without objection, any prepared statement that you have will appear in the record in its entirety, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and other members of the committee, thank you for providing us the opportunity to speak in support of an amendment to the FAA Reauthorization Reform Act that I've submitted along with my colleague, Mr. Sherman, and my colleague, Mr. Berman. The amendment would allow airports that meet specific requirements, that is, airports that have already had in place at least a partial curfew before the passage of the 1990 Airport Noise and Control Act, to implement mandatory nighttime curfews. Thousands of residents in our neighborhood, as you know, Mr. Chairman, live under flight paths near the terminals at Bob Hope and Van Nuys airports. To address the concerns of those affected by airport noise there and around the country, FAA established a process to consider a request for a curfew. But the process was designed to be so difficult that in the decades since it was established by the FAA, only one airport in the nation has successfully completed an application, that is the Bob Hope Airport, and it was summarily turned down. After years of effort, millions of dollars to complete the application for a curfew, the FAA cursorily rejected it, which is part of why we're here. In reality, the FAA approached the process in reverse. beginning with the conclusion at which to reach and worked backwards to try to justify the result. It is clear to us that the only remedy is legislative action. Our amendment would allow airports that had a curfew in place prior to the adoption of ANCA, but weren't grandfathered, and I think there are only 2 that qualify, to adopt nighttime curfews between the hours of 10 and 7, finally provide this relief. This is supported by both of the affected airports. This is not an issue of the airport versus the community. The airports themselves, as well as the community, are all on the same page. It won't affect any commercial aviation flights, and we would urge your support.
Thank you. This is a principled amendment applying to those airports that had curfews or partial curfews in effect when ANCA was adopted back in 1990. Almost all airports that had curfews in effect then were grandfathered, but for a reason I don't understand, 2 airports, and as far as we know, only 2 that had those curfews in effect were not grandfathered under the law. Both these airports are in my district, and as Adam points out, this has the full support of the community and the operators. It is endorsed by the LA World Airports, which operates the Van Nuys Airport, as well as LAX and other LA area airports. And it also has the more than full support of the Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena Airport Authority. The amendment does not authorize spending a single penny of federal money. We're not asking for a penny. All we want to do is allow the local airport operators to do what they want to do. It's a matter of local control, and in fact will save the federal government money by stopping what has been a 20-year process of these airports seeking the curfew, filing lawsuits, filing applications, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't cost any money to the federal government. It saves money. It allows people to sleep from 10 p.m. till 7 a.m.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate it. Any questions of the witnesses here? Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. That will conclude the hearing portion. I've just been informed that the rule is not quite ready yet. They're hoping we're going to recess subject. Oh, we have an additional witness. Okay. Then I'm going to ask Mr. Woodall to come and preside while I go down and cast my ballot, and we'll hear from Mr. Matheson. So we reopen the hearing. So that Mr. Matheson, 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
You've got the right guy for that short job, Matheson. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm offering an amendment along with Representative Pierce, and this is a bipartisan amendment that does something pretty straightforward. The federal government, under the Federal Airport Act and the Airport and Airway Development Act, has over their time donated surplus land for airport purposes. And some of those parcels have contained reversionary or reverter clauses. Now, this amendment would allow the Secretary of Transportation to release the specific terms and conditions or reservations or restrictions on deeds in which the United States has conveyed land to an airport, city, or county property for airport purposes, as long as the release results in furthering other airport purposes. And the reason we're doing this is we have at least 2 circumstances. We think there are others around the country as well where this may have happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, and the airport was using the land for one thing, and now they want to use it for something else. And instead of doing a separate act of Congress on every one of these, for these parcels, if we give the Department the discretion to do that, that's sort of the motivation behind the bill. So I went more than 30 seconds, and I apologize for that, but that's the amendment that Mr. Pierce and I are offering.
Any questions for Mr. Webster?
I'm not sure I understood everything you said, but in Florida, we're the only state that has a constitutional amendment that, or a provision that basically says that if there are public lands and they are sold or given back or moved to other uses, that's not allowed if there were state monies or local monies involved in that it protects the property rights of those who were, if it were got by condemnation or whatever, in that they would have to resell it or offer it to be sold back to the original owner. Does that in any way?
In this case, the original owner is the federal government, and it's the federal government who sold the land to the local municipality for their airport purposes. So that's the clarification.
Any other questions for Mr. Matheson? Thank you very much for being here.
Appreciate it.
With Mr. McGovern's permission, may I close the hearing now? Okay, so that will close the hearing portion. And let me just say that Mr. Jarvis has informed me that the rule will be available within the hour. Let me just say what we've got now. We're still in the midst of the vote on the Holmes-Norton amendment that we made in order here yesterday on the D.C. bill, and we'll have 10 minutes of debate on that, a motion to recommit, and then 15-minute vote after that. So that would mean 25 minutes, and it'd be nice if during that vote we could report out the rule. I'm just saying sort of what I'd like to see happen myself. And so you're standing at the doorway, and we're waiting for it. So the point is the Rules Committee is going to stand in recess subject to the call of the chair, and we're hoping that as we get into that last vote that we'll be able to report the rule out. That's my hope, at least. Whether my staff here can perform on that remains to be seen, but it's a request. And I will say that we are seeking to make nearly every amendment in order of the 47 that have been submitted to us as we deal with the overlapping. I know what you're going to say, and I'm not even going to yield to the gentleman to say what he's going to say. So we're going to try to make the amendments in order that have been submitted to us, as many of them as possible, and that's the reason that it's taking the time it is. So Rules Committee is going to stand in recess subject to the call of the chair. The Rules Committee will reconvene, and let me say that we are here to report out the rule on H.R. 658, and you can see the amendments that we have made in order. What? Just one second. So. So let me just say that we've made 33 amendments in order here of the 47 that were submitted to us. And a majority of the amendments made in order, amendments that have been proposed by Democrats. And so we will, if you all want some time to look through the rule, would you?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just looking at one of Mr. Schuster's.
Okay. Do you have the motion there, Mr. Woodhull? Okay, then I'm happy to recognize my friend from Lawrenceville for his motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee report a structured rule for consideration of H.R. 658, the FAA Reauthorization Reform Act of 2011. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate with 40 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, 10 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, and 10 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that in lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, now printed in the bill, it shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of the Rules Committee print dated March 22, 2011. The amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes in order only those amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against the amendments printed in the report are waived. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Let me just say at the outset again that we have made 33 amendments in order, and again, we attempted to do everything possible to ensure that we addressed every single issue that came forward. There were a number of amendments that were duplicative, and so we felt that was necessary to make those in order. And let me say that on the notion, so we will have what will be clearly a free-flowing debate on these issues. You know, there are a number of things that we hope to get completed before the end of the week. This will probably take 2 days for us. We have other items that we are hoping to address. We don't know exactly what shape that is going to take. We'll be making that determination today and tomorrow. But I believe, again, that it is very important, and I know that my friend from Rochester is concerned with a terrible plane crash that took place there about safety and security. So let me just say that the motion has been offered, and are there any amendments to the rule or discussion? Ms. Slaughter?
I would like to make an amendment to strike Schuster 24 on the grounds that we work very hard, the families have worked very hard, pain and anguish, and they have benefited through their hard work in that community, flying safety for every one of us. And I've never seen anybody working as unselfishly as they have to make sure that this came to fruition. This is something of an insult to them to say that you can relax the anti-fatigue measure. I think we owe it to the pilots of all those planes. This was hard won, and so I would like to move that we strike number 24.
So you want to prevent, this is amendment number 24.
Yes, please.
24. His amendment number 6, I guess, that's listed here.
Okay.
So
on the blue sheet, it is 24.
The gentlewoman's motion has been heard. She's seeking to prevent Mr. Schuster from being able to have a right to consider his amendment on the House floor for debate, which would mean if this bill were to be considered under an open amendment process, that Mr. Schuster would be able to offer that amendment.
Indeed, he would, and I need to stress again that what we're doing here is trying to protect the public safety.
Right, I understand that, and we certainly respect your desire to do that, but I think it is important to note that you're seeking to strike an amendment that the rule is making in order to allow a member to be heard on this. So the vote occurs on the Slaughter amendment. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Paying the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer two things. First, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record some statements from Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Without objection, Ms. Jackson-Lee's statement will be included in the record. We very much appreciate the gentleman taking the statement and having it inserted in the record.
And I would move that the committee report an open rule for consideration of H.R. 658 so that all members have an opportunity to offer amendments to this bill.
So that would be counter to the amendment that was just offered by Ms. Slaughter. Am I correct?
No, it would take care of it quite nicely, I think. Well, no, actually,
It would
frankly,
take
no,
care of it
I
quite
would
nicely.
prefer, we've lost that, but given that, I would certainly support an open rule.
You would support an open
Having
rule,
lost my amendment to remove Mr.
which
Schuster's
would-
amendment.
Okay, it's just a little confusing for me here.
Oh,
but I
that's
guess-
not confusing,
Well,
David. That's pretty easy.
I'm-
I lost that
so-
vote, so that we'll have
What's
one now
what's
to open
confusing
up.
is you wanted to restrict
I
the ability of a
wanted
member to
one
offer
issue.
a proposal,
One issue.
and now you want unlimited opportunity for a member to do that. So I just want to make that clear. The vote occurs in the McGovern
imagine
amendment.
most
Those in
people
favor will say
grasp that
aye.
pretty quickly.
Those opposed, no.
Aye.
Pay the chair. I know, I'm a slow learner. I'm sorry. Pay the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Ms. Fox.
No.
Mr. Bishop. Mr. Woodall.
No.
Mr. Nugent. Mr. Scott. No. Mr. Webster. No. Ms. Slaughter.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern. Aye. Mr. Hastings. Aye. Mr. Pope. Aye. Mr. Chairman.
No. And the clerk report the total. And the motion is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Lawrenceville. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. And pay the chair. The
No.
ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is
Roll
agreed
call,
to.
please.
And clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions. Ms. Fox.
Aye.
Mr. Bishop. Mr. Woodall. Aye. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Scott. Aye. Mr. Webster. Ms. Slaughter.
No.
Mr. McGovern. No. Mr. Hastings. No. Mr. Polis. No. Mr. Chairman.
Aye. And the clerk report the total.
5 yea, 4 nay.
And the motion is agreed to, and this will be managed on the floor by our good friend for his first rule from Florida, Mr. Webster,
And Mr. McGovern will manage
and
for
Mr.
the
Govern
minority.
for the minority. And wait, I can't tell you what our schedule consists of at this juncture. I suspected that might be the next question, but just as soon as we know what our schedule is for the rest of the week, we will certainly get in touch with you. So thank you all very much. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.